Encounter Africa.
Engage.
Independent Television.
AIT, sharing the African experience.
Focus Nigeria, your program that puts the spotlight on happenings within the Nigerian polity with an aim of deepening the practice of democracy and good governance. I'm Oloyede Oworu, and I didn't walk into this studio by accident, as some people were saying. Yes, I'm standing in for your regular anchor, Benga Ruleba, who is still away on official assignment. Now, before we get on with the topic of discussion for today, let's do a quick wrap of some of the issues that have arisen in the polity over the weekend. Now, bloodletting and robbery continued in parts of northern Nigeria as Rigasa, a suburb of the Kaduna metropolis, came under attack on Friday night. Gunmen stormed the area, killing the village head and a police officer. And in Misau local government area in Bauchi State, a similar fate was suffered as two policemen met their deaths at the hands of unknown gunmen. The trigger-happy merchants of death also unleashed terror on Shira and Tafawa Balewa, all in Bauchi State in the northeast of Nigeria, killing two and injuring many others. And in Kano, it was the same story as gunmen opened fire on a group of card players and killed 3 of them, including a prison warden. Now, one thing which characterized the attacks is that the gunmen came riding on motorcycles. Now, I guess there's no prizes for guessing those responsible for the attack on the unsuspecting card players. Well, a man suspected to be the head of operations of the Boko Haram sect was said to have been arrested by the Joint Task Force in Kano. The man, said to have been an indigene of Oyo State in southwest Nigeria, is alleged to have masterminded several deadly attacks in Kano. Well, he's currently being interrogated by security operatives here in Abuja. Now, elsewhere in the country, specifically in Igara, in Akoko Edo local government area of Edo State, robbers invaded a police armory and took away 3 guns, which they later used in an attempt to rob 2 banks. Well, luck, however, ran out on the robbers as they got caught up in crossfire with the security men attached to the banks. Well, they, however, escaped, but one of them sustained a bullet wound, and the blood trail from the wound helped the police to trace him to a cave in the Igara Hills. Now, the police are trying to smoke him and the rest of his accomplices out. I guess let's wish them luck. And another robbery attempt was foiled in Minna, the capital of Niger State. Now, the robbers, who trailed a female student of the Federal University of Technology, Minna, to her apartment, were about to carry out their mission when her screams attracted some students around her. Now, one of them, a 400-level student, was shot dead when he attempted to rescue his female colleague from the robbers. Now, the police public relations officer in Minna says a manhunt for the fleeing robbers has been launched. Well, calling this a wave of violence is, to say the least, an understatement. It started slowly and now seems to have become rooted in our everyday life. The security authorities appear to have stepped up their game, but the violence is still here and becoming increasingly difficult to get rid of. But we do hear of a new thinking among those in authority as to how to tackle the issue. The presidency is said to be considering the possibility of adopting martial law. And this is expected, if you look at it carefully, to threaten the existing Anti-Terrorism Act as an amendment of what is presently ostensibly to give more bite to the fight against terrorism. Well, it's interesting, if you ask me, whether this helps to reduce or heighten the acts of terror remains to be seen. Well, those widely speculated to have fueled this current wave of insecurity, the politicians are at it again. Yes, there's an underground plan. Well, allegations making the rounds have it that there's an underground plan to ensure that President Goodluck Jonathan contests and wins the 2015 presidential election. Now, the president has publicly declared that 2015 is not on his mind right now, and has even warned party loyalists to stop the campaign. But it appears that some of his close associates, according to newspaper reports over the weekend, are thinking differently and secretly pushing for the realization of this grand plan. And this is said to be supported by the president's kinsmen. The report goes further to say that parts of the plan have been actualized with the election, or would you call it selection, of the new National Executive Committee of the ruling People's Democratic Party. Whether this is a plot to test the president's candidacy, I guess time will tell. But the opposition doesn't appear to be taking this thing lightly, as two heavyweights have reached conclusions to fly a joint ticket to wrestle power from the PDP come 2015. Yes, I'm talking about retired General Muhammadu Buhari of the Congress for Progressive Change, CPC, and Asiwaju Bola Tinubu of the Action Congress of Nigeria, ACN. Now, both men are said to have buried the hatchets of the past and have resolved to forge ahead with the joint ticket, which is hoped to give the PDP a run 2015. All right, what more can I tell you about that than rather to keep my lips sealed and get to the subject matter for discussion today. Now, arguably, the matter of the moment is the recommendation of the National Judicial Council, NJC, last week to have Justice Ayosalami reinstated as the President of the Court of Appeal. That's coming 9 months after the same NJC recommended his sack. Now, if you've been reading the newspapers over the weekend, the recommended reinstatement has elicited probably more reactions on than his sack. Well, on Focus Nigeria this Monday, we shall be x-raying the issues surrounding the Justice Salami saga with my guests, who you'll get to meet after this short break. Don't go away.
We want a good Nigeria spirit.
That are benefiting at the IOCs. Why? Because they have a tax regime, a royalty regime that was framed over 42 years ago.
Good ball in. Still with Morocco. Surely.
Explore Africa.
Encounter Africa.
Engage Africa.
Enjoy Africa's compelling,
Exciting
and breathtaking
experience
with Kakaki,
the African voice.
right, if you're just joining us and wondering what's going on, that's the program's Focus Nigeria with me, Oloyede Uru, standing in for Benga Aruleba. And like I told you before the break, matter for discussion is the recommended reinstatement by the National Judicial Commission last Thursday. Recommended reinstatement of Justice Ayo Salami as the president of the Court of Appeal. Well, the amazing thing about all this is that the recommended reinstatement is coming 9 months after the same NJC recommended his sack. So what has happened in the last 9 months that has caused the NJC to have a rethink? What are all the issues that this again has thrown up? Well, I'm joined in the studio by two men who should definitely have answers to some of these questions. It's my pleasure to welcome on Focus Nigeria this Monday, Professor Yemi Akinseye George. Professor Akinseye George is a legal practitioner and consultant at the Nasarawa State University, Kefi, in North Central Nigeria. Prof, once again, it's great to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah. We're also joined on the program by Barrister Charles Ndukwe, who simply likes to be referred to as an Abuja-based legal practitioner. Barrister Ndukwe, it's great to have you on the program.
It's my pleasure to be here today.
All right. We will take a short break now and get into the discussions proper in just a moment. Stay right where you are. All right, thanks for staying with us. And like I said, it's time for us to start talking. I've already introduced my guests, and I'll start off with Professor Akinseye George. Now, the dust has hardly settled from Justice Salami's sack as the president of the Court of Appeal before Thursday's recommended reinstatement, which appears to have generated more dust. What do we make of all this?
For me, it is quite instructive that the NJC, which was the body that recommended the suspension of the former president of the Court of Appeal, has also, the same NJC has also, to my mind, rightly recommended his reinstatement. The dust we are talking about, the noise, in the press in this respect, I'm sure it's by politicians. And the problem that the judiciary, the number one problem of the judiciary in this country is pressure from the political class, to interfere and to influence judicial processes, by at whatever cost. So the noise, I believe, is also by politicians. If not directly by politicians, but being fired from behind by politicians.
Okay, Barrister Ndukwe, what's your take on all this?
Well, my simple attitude to response to this is what in the first place informed his being recommended for compulsory retirement by the NJC 9 months ago. Since that time, what has changed to bring about the same NJC recommending that the man should be reinstated? You will recall that there were quite a lot of things that surrounded the initial recommendation for dismissal, for compulsory retirement. Those issues, have they actually been properly attended to and determined to the satisfaction not only of the NJC but to the viewing public? My learned friend and the distinguished professor was talking about pressure from politicians and the dust being raised by politicians. Fortunately, I'm not a politician. I don't know anything about politics. I'm just a legal practitioner. But I am worried when I take the events of what has happened from that particular point in time till today. Even the genesis that brought the things that brought about the recommendation in the first place. And I begin to ask myself, can the public, or can one say...
So, Barrister, perhaps you can remind us of some of those issues that surrounded the call for his retirement.
You will recall that before the call for his retirement, there was a recommendation for him to be elevated to the Supreme Court. And he turned that one down for reasons best known to him. I don't want to contest that. And I don't want to look into that. Then, out of that, there was a running disagreement between him and the CJN. And this had to do with a certain case that was decided in Sokoto and all the rest of them. Then there were several other allegations thrown up. Then the NJC now held a meeting, invited him, and a lot of things happened. They now allege that he committed perjury, that he needs to apologize to the CJN. And from that point, the issue of recommendation came out. My worry about all of this is this: a man that was recommended for the Supreme Court appointment, the same facts that qualified him to be elevated were also the same facts that qualified him to be treated like a villain. It leaves so much to be desired.
Okay, Prof.
And for me, I am not too. It's not too clear to me. I'm not a politician.
Does Prof asked the question, and yes, he said that between 9 months and now, what has changed? Though it's not barrister's job to ask questions, it's mine, but it's the question or the state.
Thank you.
Really, what has changed?
Thank you very much. What has changed is that the NGC, which is the constitutional body that administers discipline, within the judicial system, has reconsidered its decision, which the body is entitled to do. Then the chairmanship of that council has also changed. There's a new Chief Justice in place. And the new Chief Justice appears to be determined to go as far as possible to put things right in the judiciary. That's the impression I get. So that same body set up another panel, which was the membership of that panel comprised Justice Calgo, Justice I'm trying to remember the name
Nasser,
of Justice Nasser, Justice Nasser, who was president of the Court of Appeal for many years.
Ajibola.
And Prince Bola Ajibola, the former judge of the International Court of Justice. So this panel came to a unanimous decision that Justice Salami was not liable for any misconduct. Perhaps they have taken a broader look at the issues. And now this panel made a recommendation to the NJC. And NJC, we read in the papers, reportedly, by a decision of 11-9, that a recommendation should be made to Mr. President to reinstate Justice Salami. This is what we read in the papers. For me, this is a step in the right direction, simply because Mr. President came in on the basis of the advice of the NJC. If the same NJC now deems it fit, based on the facts before them, based on the recommendation of a reputed body, subcommittee, made up of distinguished jurists of national and international recognition. I think we should not start, raising issues. Those issues were addressed by a panel that was set up that made recommendations for improving judiciary. We know there are problems. But my own position is that any observer of Nigerian judiciary will notice that the biggest problem confronting our judiciary is political pressure. Politicians wanting to use the system to serve their own selfish ends, not thinking about the long-term effect on not only on the constitutional system, the democratic system, but on the democratic system, but on the people as well. So I think it's in the enlightened interest of Nigerians that there should be stability in the judiciary. It's in the enlightened interest of Nigerians that rule of law should prevail rather than rule of man. So if the NJC, they recommended to Mr. President suspension, now thinks in its own wisdom that suspension should be revisited and reversed. I think they should be given the benefit of the doubt.
Okay, Barrister Nduko, you said you two were mystified by the fact that nothing has really changed for them to have changed their mind. And Professor Akinseyi George said, well, look, they probably have taken a broader look at the issues. You enumerated the issues yourself. They're not that broad. You understand? No. So doesn't that lend some credence to what Prof says, that maybe there are a lot of political undertones in the whole thing?
Let me say it from the onset. For me, it goes beyond the issue of the several recommendations that have been thrown up since this issue came up. My simple response to issues of allegations of corruption and arbitrariness is that it should be dealt with. It should be properly investigated, because the greatest threat to our national unity is not even Boko Haram violence, it's the issue of corruption that has decimated and strangulated the soul of this country. And when corruption is seen in any facet of our lives, I think it's an opportunity, or when there is an allegation, I think it is an opportunity for us to down the tools, look at it, see how we can, take out this virus that has invaded the system called Nigeria. Right. Here we have a situation where there are allegations being traded both against the president of the Court of Appeal, the former president of the Court of Appeal, or the one that is Salami, or the former CJN, based on the cases that they have handled. I had thought, as a citizen of this country, that this is an opportunity for the judiciary to do an introspection, look at the forces, and see whether actually the problem of the judiciary is pressure or internal. But what did we do? What did we do? There was a change of guard. A panel was set up. The panel said, let us not go into the details. You withdraw your case. You withdraw your case. Let there be a reconciliation. And then let this man be reinstated. Frankly speaking, if in the first place I was against his
recommendation for his retirement,
frankly speaking, because I felt that the way and manner the president attended to it was more proper. But that does not change the fact that the allegations that were traded prior to that recommendation offered us a sound opportunity to take stock and look at what was happening in the judiciary with a view to making changes that will sustain us as a nation. I do not believe that stability in the judiciary could be achieved by closing allegations, sitting on them, and recommending reconciliation. I believe it is an issue that should be dealt with. For me, I'm a legal practitioner, but by the privilege of God, I have the opportunity of coordinating a small fellowship that believes in revival and believes in restoration of the glory and power of God in the church. I have members in my fellowship. As when a girl jumps out today and lays accusation against me that I had so and so and so and so dealings with it, if and the elders of the church, instead of investigating to find out the facts, say, no, to maintain stability within the fellowship. Because this one is a man of God. Let us reconcile. For me, my name had been tainted. The public had heard about it. I will not even be happy. And I guess that was why Salami even refused to withdraw the case that he filed before the Federal High Court. Because this is an issue of vindication. The matter must be dealt with. The truth must be told. If he is free, vindicated, fine, the public should know. If he is not vindicated, the public should know. It gives us an opportunity to look at the judiciary once again.
Okay, Prof. I think I don't have any problem with some of the points that my colleague is making.
Nice to know you're referring to him as your friend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're members of the same profession. We're brothers. The constitutional body that is recognized to deal with issues of malfeasance and corruption in the judiciary is the NJC. He is talking about vindication. If NJC took a decision and recommended suspension, and the same NJC took a decision, recall, what other vindication are we asking?
Okay, Prof, let me ask you, are you happy with the circumstances that led to the recommendation for his retirement? Because he said, Barrister said he wasn't particularly convinced with the way that they went about it.
The circumstances that preceded his suspension were also politically motivated, which was the most unfortunate development in judiciary. It's a phase of the judiciary that is rather closed and not reopened, because it does not augur well for the progress of our judicial system and of our constitutional democracy. I saw the reign of power, the reign of man, rather than the reign of the rule of law. The power of the big man, whereby somebody who could not be cowed had to be thrown out. I mean, that was more of impunity. But that's the regime that has gone. Now, the new dispensation sets up a larger panel. In fact, there are advantages that came out of the crisis. The advantages, for instance, included recognizing that the composition of the NJC has to change. A situation where one man, the Chief Justice, will have so much power of appointing, of choosing members of that is being looked into.
But one thing that hasn't come out of it, like what Barrister Duque, there was a lot of missiles being traded on allegations of which remain unresolved, and I mean, to a lot of people are unhappy about that. I
tell you, we do not have to. I mean, we are lawyers. It is very easy to throw allegations around. It is very easy. It is the easiest thing to do. The challenge is we cannot, on the basis of mere allegations or suspicion that certain things happened, distort established facts. What are the established facts in this circumstance? One, NJC, by a majority of 11-9, has recommended that the suspension of Justice Salami should be reversed. That's a fact. The NJC has also set up a panel of very competent people, men of integrity, to look into the same situation. The same committee made a recommendation. That's a fact. We cannot, on the basis of these facts, we cannot, on the basis of allegations. There will always be allegations. We should have the courage to do what is right. If we have taken a step which we think is not right, such as suspending the President of the Court of Appeal, and the same NJC now comes together, by majority says, this man should be reinstated. What are we waiting for? Justice is taking its course.
Okay, Barrister Duque, we learned that, I read in the newspaper that the presidency is yet to receive the recommendations of the National Judicial Council, but everybody else in the world seems to be aware. Can we read any meaning into this, or is the timeline normal?
Well, I don't want to read any meaning into it, because if the issues, this thing was only decided on Thursday. Today is Monday. I don't know when the issue got to the table of the president. And the president will want to look at the recommendation, study it, and then take a position. And I don't think it is too late for the president to still react. So for me, it does not raise any dust. But if I may add to what I have said before, You don't treat a cancer patient by pretending that the cancer is not there. When virus invades your computer set, you don't treat it by pretending that it's not there. What you do is apply an antivirus measure that will clean up your system, and you have a proper system. And if you ask me, he has made allusion as to, which I agree with him, that the way and manner the matter was handled and the president gave his recommendation, I don't agree with it. But these are the things that we need to look into and find out if there were foul play along the line, who were responsible. Identify them. Even if the president made a mistake, that should be pointed out. The president is
but
not...
hasn't that been pointed out with the reversal?
No, not the reversal.
With the change of mind. Hasn't
the
that been pointed out?
reversal good, change of mind good. But the people that played roles there, what has been done to them?
Who are we talking about specifically here?
The NJC that made a recommendation in the first place, retire him compulsorily for misconduct, came back 9 months after, made a recommendation, reinstate him. The misconduct is no longer there. The same NJC set up a panel. The panel didn't investigate the misconduct. The panel rather recommended reconciliation. The same NJC, for the same facts, recommended him for elevation to the Supreme Court. The same facts that qualified him to the Supreme Court also qualified him for dismissal. Is that not worrisome to you? If it's not worrisome to you, it is worrisome to me. I believe that corruption is the greatest enemy of my nation. If we close eyes to corruption in such issues like this, which one shall we investigate and which one shall we apply the proper measure? Let me tell you on this point. The reason why people's hearts are hardened in getting deeper and deeper into corruption is because at the end of the day, nothing comes out of it. Nobody ends up being punished. If NJC was wrong, why should the members still be there? If the members that were members of the agency that took the former decision, if they were wrong, what has been done to them?
More questions, Prof.
See, my learned friend
issues from
appears to
proper
be
perspectives.
confusing two issues. There are issues of morality, there are issues of law. And they don't always have to agree. At the same time, they don't always have to diverge. There are meeting points. For me, it is to the credit of the judicial system that it has looked inwards, established a panel. There must be constitutional reform for you to bring about significant change in the judiciary. The judiciary cannot implement these reforms, but they have made recommendations to the relevant bodies. I'm aware of that. We made inputs into these recommendations. We need to be practical and pragmatic. How do we find solutions to the problems on our hands? We need to embark on constitutional reform. We need to restructure the NJC. We need to look into political domination of the committees that recommend appointment of judges, particularly at the state level. If you look at the State Judicial Service Commission, it's made up of 80% of membership are nominees of the governor.
But Prof, do we have to sack and reinstate the president of the Court of Appeal before we, realize all these things?
There was a problem. There was a problem. That problem was addressed, but in a manner that was not satisfactory. And the same panel, the same NJC, with a slightly different composition, says something went wrong. Perhaps what my learned friend may wish to talk about is that if some people are found to have done, because if now you are telling us that Salami is vindicated by reason of his reinstatement, and that the technical committee of Justice Nasser did not find him liable, was anybody found liable? So to that extent, I agree with my learned friend. If anybody was found liable, such people, that should be made public. But the issue that has brought us here, I believe, from the invitation, whether it's proper for the NJC to revisit.
Oh no, we're looking at all the issues, not just one. We're looking at all the issues. Like I said at the beginning, not
to
just
look at the issues.
Yes.
Three things I would say. Three things that are critical. One, there must be adequate information made available, not just to Mr. President, but to the public, as to the reasons that informed the advise that Mr. Joseph Salami should be vindicated, should be reinstated. That should be made. That should be made public. You know. Then if anybody has also been found wanting in the process, that also should be made public. However, it is important, and it is to the credit of the judiciary, that we were wrong in suspending this man. Therefore, we are now recommending reinstatement. We should not allow the political, the pressures from politicians, call logs and all of that, which have not been established. There are cases in court, people saying all of that are not sufficient to distort the fact that this panel, the constitutional body that was established to look into it, has done its job and made a recommendation. And the other thing is, some said he should withdraw his case before Mr. President can look into the recommendation. I don't agree with that, simply because there was a case pending when the suspension was implemented.
That's right, because over the weekend we heard former Osun State Governor Lagunse last say that he kicked against the recommended.
He
said because it runs. You're a lawyer. He said it runs against the doctrine of les peculiaires. There's a
Les pendens.
Les pendens. Yes. That there's a case in the Federal High Court between Justice Salami and the Osun and Ekiti chapters of the PDP. Does that?
But there was case pending. There was a case pending when he was suspended. There was a case pending when he was suspended.
My take on all of these issues is this: I don't want to go with what Olagunsoye said, or what Fayemi is saying, or what Oni is not saying, and all the rest of them. The reason is because when you do cases with politicians, every politician play outside the rules. It's certain.
You said, Prof.
Of course, almost every politician play outside the rules. And when it comes to litigation, they also play outside the rules. I have had politicians that will tell you, lawyer, go to court, just face court. Let me do the politics. You get what I'm saying?
And he usually has his way?
I don't know. Let's not get into that. Let me just do the politics. Just leave it at that. You get what I'm saying? So I'm not carried away by what Oni, Fayemi, or Olagunsoye, or whoever is saying. What I want to look at, because this is my constituency, the judiciary. I have been in this thing that's the only thing I know how to do. And if the thing is dead, I will probably not have any other job. So it is better.
You probably make a good interviewer because you're asking so many questions.
So it's better that we look at the judiciary and see how we can deliver the judiciary. If corruption has eaten the fabrics of this nation, I do not think that judiciary is excluded. And for me, this allows us a good platform to look at certain things that ordinarily we would not have been looked into. It's difficult to investigate the CJN. But this time around, we didn't ask the CJN to talk. He talked and volunteered information that showed that certain things were not going properly within his domain. This time around, we have the Court of Appeal president saying certain things that are strange to us. And we felt that, are these things happening in these high places? If they are happening in these high places, and these are the major people that are in charge talking about it, let's dig more and see whether there's a rot behind it. I just want to look at it from a global view. The issue of recommendation really is not my border, because I have made my position. In the first place, I do not think it was right for any person to have sent him packing based on mere allegation.
Okay,
so if the body that sent him packing now says bring him back, I have nothing against it. But I'm looking at a more global issue of corruption. How do we begin to deal with corruption wherever we find it? Whether it is in judiciary, whether it is in the executive, whether it is in the legislature. That's my position.
All right, you want to say something on that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I share my colleague's point, the point he just made. There's need to look into the Constitution. There are many impediments. There are many factors in the Constitution that fuel corruption at all levels and in the various tiers of government and organs of government. For instance, I have told you about the fact that a chief judge has a tenure ad infinitum until retirement. Could be there for 15 years, depending on his age at the time of appointment. Why don't we give tenure to chief judges of a state? 5 years. like a vice chancellor of a university. After being chief judge for 5 years, you revert.
You have to decide whether he will continue.
If you know that your appointment has a terminal date, you'll be more careful. And then the appointment of judges, the State Judicial Service Commissions are dominated by appointees of the governor, Attorney General, many people nominated by the governor.
That is so.
So that means you cannot appoint a judge who is not politically accepted in a state.
So, Basin, that just buttresses his point.
Precisely.
That a lot of these
the composition of the NJC itself. The composition of the NJC itself. But I believe that there was a panel chaired by Honorable Justice Waits, who made far-reaching recommendations, which the NJC, the Chief Justice of the NJC, has tabled before the process. There is a due process. We all know there's corruption. That's no news.
He's laughing. I want to know what. I want to know. What,
no. I'm just looking at it.
Yes.
My problem is the response of the authorities to issues of corruption does not give me the impression that somebody is bothered and that somebody is worried. Frankly speaking,
couldn't that simply be because nobody really is bothered?
It does not give me the impression that somebody is bothered and that somebody is worried. And from what I have seen, I wasn't born yesterday. I have seen quite a lot in this nation. I have seen a lot of things happen both in the judiciary.
Let me guide you. Let me help you.
Let's allow him to finish, please.
Let me just land. You see, sometimes it gives me the impression that there is an elitist conspiracy up there to keep their house in order and subject this nation into what we are going into now. And then outwardly giving us the impression that somebody is working to set us free from this chain of corruption. And it worries me if at the end of the day you follow a trajectory of any scandal. And at the end of the day, you will not be surprised that if you see the major dramatic personnel in that scandal being recommended for serious appointments by the same government that accused them of corruption. You see, so I'm not concerned. The issue of salami reinstatement is a small issue. For me, I'm not bothered. The body that said throw him out now said we have replaced ourselves, bring him back. I have nothing against it. But what I have against is, shall we close our eyes to obvious cases of corruption? Shall we close our eyes to certain things that the CJ himself disclosed? Shall we close our eyes to certain things that have been closed in the judiciary while we pretend that our house is in order? If we close our eyes and go like this, we'll be like a masquerade that is naked.
So are you saying that all these ought to be done before Justice Salami's reinstatement? Or, I mean, because you're saying you have nothing against his reinstatement.
What I'm saying is that in 9 months, 9 months from August till today is enough for any serious-minded person or authority to look into some of the things that this case threw up,
but we haven't,
and deal with them decisively.
But it hasn't been done. So what do you do?
Deal with them decisively. It has not been done.
Yeah. So
what we are looking at is recommendation.
So what I'm trying to say now is that, are you saying that, I mean, they should have, I mean, kept this recommendation of Justice Salami's reinstatement until that's done? Is that what?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that this issue should have been attacked.
But it's not too late.
From the roots. So that the public will be convinced. Yeah. Because justice is not only an issue of you, the judge, deciding and knowing that what you have decided is correct. The legitimacy of the thing that was decided should be an issue. If those who are watching do not believe that justice has been done, that is why it is said that justice must be seen to be done.
Because I think what is getting Barrister Ndukwe angry is one of the recommendations of the NJC, which called for reconciliation. Now, I mean, that reconciliation, to a number of people who I've spoken to, appears to be an attempt to sweep a number of things under the carpet. How do you reconcile two people that have thrown so many brickbats at each other in the past.
And revealed a lot of information that we should have worked with.
Without being resolved, and then you now say, I mean, people are saying, what on earth does that kind of reconciliation mean?
The truth is, I'm not aware of that aspect of recommendation. This issue about reconciliation.
It's very clear. It's it's about the third or second.
I have not taken a full study of the report. If reconciliation is there, reconciliation is to be encouraged. We are Africans.
What type of reconciliation?
There's what is called, there's what is known as conflict dissolving rather than conflict resolving. When you dissolve a conflict, two former adversaries become friends. You need unity to build a system. You can no community can make progress without reconciliation. In fact, we need national reconciliation as a whole, not just reconciliation between warring parties here. For instance, when Mr. President decided to challenge, to go to when former General Buhari went to court, one of my own suggestions to a few people in government was, look, you are going to win this case in court. Mr. President will win this case in court, but it's not going to solve much problem. We still have crisis in our hands today, and all of these things. I mean, the politicians. Many of the crises in the judiciary, and let me tell you, he was talking about corruption. There are 9 months. To change a constitutional process that involves 150 million people must not be rushed. And there's a process. The State House of Assembly must be involved. Recommendations, Justice Owais has made recommendations. These recommendations have been forwarded. Civil society made input. These recommendations are before the constitutional bodies in the National Assembly that are looking into the Constitution. I believe we need to expedite these processes so that we don't go on forever. To that extent, I agree with my learned brother. But there's a process. Even countries that have embarked on revolution, Libya, all of these Arab Spring, infested countries, we still have to come to the table to talk.
You see, this is your conflict.
To take the country forward.
This conflict dissolving that you're talking about, won't we, dissolve a lot of issues too that Nigerians are interested in?
No, it's not about dissolving issues.
You say the conflict. That's the source of the conflict. These issues are the source of the conflict.
Let me tell you one thing. It is very, very easy to sit back and throw allegations. Yeah. But when you subject these allegations to scrutiny, to critical analysis, by the end of the day, you may not find substance in them. I'm not saying there are no issues. I mean, issues of power, issues of impunity, issues of, you don't do that, I deal with you, that's abuse of office. All of those issues should be looked into. But what fuels those issues is the structure that we have, an imbalanced structure of the NJC, where you have one individual appointing virtually everybody. That's structure. Then we need to look into it. And the recommendations have been made to the appropriate body. That is the constitutional reform process. What I would like to say is that the process of reforming our constitution should be expedited. The constitution, as presently constituted, creates many bottlenecks, incapacitates the judiciary. Look at interlocutory orders. You start a case. If you don't want that case to go on, you file an interlocutory process. When your case is dismissed, you go to the Court of Appeal. You bring a stay, and the process continues. A case that should be expeditiously determined. So what I'm saying in effect is that we should not get sentimental. We should look at the issues dispassionately, patiently and meticulously. And how do we do that? Let us maintain our sanity, maintain our calmness. We are not enemies, we are brothers. Let us sit together. Nobody likes the present state of the judiciary or the present state of the country. But what is responsible? The factor that is fueling corruption in this country is the manner of producing our elected officers. That's the mother of corruption, the political process. You have to buy seats to get to the House of Reps. You pay money. You bribe electorates. You bribe voters in electoral primaries. That is the root cause of corruption. That has thrown merit to the background. I studied corruption in America for more than a year. Corruption and constitutionalism.
Did you study how to fight corruption or how to be corrupt?
How to address corruption. Okay. The root causes of corruption. Right. So we don't have to be sentimental. We don't have to talk about scandal. There are too many scandals to talk about. We don't even have to talk about individuals. We should look at our structures. We should look at our laws. We should look at our processes. We should deal with issues of prevention. If we don't prevent corruption, are we not in a position to prevent corruption? Is it not easier to prevent than to recover? Because when you lose the treasury, you are able to engage the services of lawyers and accountants who manipulate the law and books, and they keep the processes going. Why don't we deal with all these issues dispassionately rather than, Thank you. That's what I was looking for.
I knew you were looking for that word.
Absolutely.
Okay. Barrister Ndukwe, you said that outside the judiciary, you don't know what you would do, and obviously integrity of the judiciary is key to you. Now, this Justice Salami saga, as it has played out over the last 9 months, how would you say it has affected the judiciary?
Frankly speaking, I belong to a constituency where when we sit together, we air our views. And from what I have heard a few of my colleagues say, they are really worried as to what is the future of the judiciary. Where are we going to? If clear cases of corruption are not properly attended to, perhaps because of the personalities that are involved. And from another constituency where I am also an advocate, permit me if I pull out a scripture from the Holy Bibles. Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verse 11. It says that when sentence against evil is not speedily executed, the children of men are set in their hearts to do evil. And that is the bane of my nation. And that is the cry of my heart. That is the burden I have for my nation. That this audience table should be cleansed so that we will hand over to our children. The way that we are going, it's sad. But I have confidence that the Lord God Almighty will rescue this nation. Not because the government is doing anything to fight corruption, but because he will provoke certain things in the heavenlies.
Did I hear somebody say amen out there?
That will cause corruption to be exterminated in my nation.
Prof, your closing remarks on all this. I mean, the toll is taken on the judiciary, and how do we move forward?
Thank you very much. My take on this is that we need to restore merit in the system. We need to put in place a foolproof appointing process and an accountable and transparent appointing process. We need to reduce the influence of politicians on the process of appointing judges. Absolutely. And then we need to remove all the incentives to, factors
corruption.
that fuel corruption. And one of the factors has been rightly pinpointed by my colleague. He said, delay in dealing with cases of corruption. Because once you delay, the evidence dissipates.
And Professor,
yes.
what does this to Justice Salami's appeal before the Court of Appeal?
On the basis of the doctrine of least pendants. But I said that under normal circumstances, that suspension should not have been done because there was a case pending in court. Oh, yeah. But notwithstanding that case, the suspension order was imposed. Now, is it mandatory for Justice Salami to withdraw his case before Mr. President can accept the recommendation of the NJC? I think not.
That's the way you see
it's not a condition.
I don't think it's mandatory.
It's not a condition.
But my take on it is that once the president acts on it and acts in his favor, then his case in the Court of Appeal should be withdrawn.
Okay, I think it's safe for us to end this discussion on a note while we are all in agreement. Yes, we've been looking at issues surrounding the sack and recommended reinstatement of Justice Ayo Salami as the president of the Court of Appeal. We've been looking at it through the eyes of two learned gentlemen. Barrister Charles Ndukwe is a Abuja-based legal practitioner, and like we also found out in the course of this program, a clergyman of some sort. Barrister Ndukwe, many thanks for your time.
Thank you.
We've also been joined by Professor Yemi Akinseye-George. Professor Akinseye-George is a legal practitioner also and a consultant at the Nasarawa State University in Kefi, North Central Nigeria. Prof, always nice to have you around also. That's where we draw the curtain on the show this Monday, the first for the week. Join us same time tomorrow, Tuesday, as we examine another issue making the rounds in the Nigerian polity. I'm Oloyede Owuru. Thanks for staying with us.
Well, but how else can one appropriate it against the backdrop of the present reality? I mean, you and I are getting old. We're now in our 60s. Ibilola is just emerging into life. Though, of course, that should not be the basis why one's promise should not stand. Just staring at me like this is making me uncomfortable. I did not make the promise to you under duress, even when Ibilola was not in existence. But having come this far with you in life, one should be able to ask you to take consideration of the present reality vis-a-vis promise made.
Yeah, I am not unmindful of the current reality. But then, life is about making sacrifices where and when necessary. I am prepared to sacrifice my emotional fulfillment for that of my son.
Budgeting. Questions such as, do we need an NMPC in the first place, must be asked. My view, we don't.
He is the field officer. He has the responsibility to ensure all operations regarding arrest and all that is conducted in the usual manner.
Engaging emerging topical issues in the polity.
The mere fact that we pay for 24 million liters of petrol on a daily basis, which is shocking. And I think by now people should be resigning their appointment.
It's supposed to be a business, but it has become another arm of government, and it's also suffering from the malaise that have bedeviled government in Nigeria.
We want a good Nigeria first.
That are benefiting at the IOCs. Why? Because they have a tax regime, a royalty regime that was framed over 42 years ago.
Good ball in. Still with Morocco. Surely.
Explore Africa.
Encounter Africa.
Engage Africa.
Enjoy Africa's compelling,
exciting,
and breathtaking
experience. The African voice.
Now listen. The law is now beyond argument that the effect of the nullification of a thing, not necessarily an election, the effect of nullification of a thing is to completely wipe out, obliterate, remove, undo, erase, or render it ineffective.
Why must Nigerians pay the crime that has been perpetrated? That is about.
The physiological
independent television.
AIT, sharing the African experience.
Hello and welcome to the program. This is the Money Show live from Abuja, the nation's capital. I am Nancy. Thank you for joining me this Monday morning. Is a cool, beautiful as well as bright after the rains yesterday in Abuja. I hope Lagos is okay. I hope Port Harcourt is also calm and beautiful. For those of you watching us from the UK, from other parts of the world, welcome to the program. Okay, I think I'll start this morning by taking you through the market rounds. We do follow the markets. Of course, it's the start of another trading day, not just in Nigeria, but in other parts of Africa and indeed the world. So much has happened in the markets. Was it last week, JP Morgan Chase, a leading bank in the U.S., posted a $2 billion loss. In Nigeria, it's still the second quarter, and the economy is trying to grapple with a lot of things at this point. Analysts are saying what's happening to the subsidy report, the subsidy probe report. President Goodluck Jonathan, 3 weeks after the report has been released, we've not heard anything so far. Where else should I go to? Anyway, let me take you through what you will be expecting today on the show. Today's team will be looking at data management in Nigeria. We'll be looking at what the issues are as it concerns data capturing and data management. What should NIMSI be doing? What is NICDA doing? What should other stakeholders be doing? Nigeria, of course, is a country of about 167 million people. At this point in time, in the 21st century, do we have a full data collection system that will capture who is a Nigerian, who is a Sudanese that just entered the country, who is a Chadian, who is a Nigerian, and of course these are and many more things we'll be looking at today's edition of the program. Dr. Akin Fakmunda is joining me. I hope I got that right, but he will be my guest in a short while. But let's get started with the market numbers. Let's tell you how the Nigerian Stock Exchange traded last week. We've seen the market, the broad index, recovering or rebounding, so to speak. The broad market index, it's at the 22,000 point level, and that point level is psychologically important. We saw the market, the broad market index being at 21,000 point level for a very, very long time. But last week the market index was down by about 19 basis points, and this was due to profit taking. So trading at the Nigerian Stock Exchange closed southwards last week after recording 3 consecutive weeks of positive trading session, while the negative market transactions witnessed in 3 of the trading days last week pulled back the market to the red zone. Let's quickly take the indices now. Do we have them? The Nigerian Stock Exchange All Share Index, that is the All Share. Talking about all shares listed on the exchange. Don't forget that they are sectoral indices that monitor the NSE 30 blue chip index. That's the top 30 companies that is always reviewed, I think, quarterly. You also have the index that monitors the banks, the food and beverage sector. But talking about the all share index, it finished at 22,622.44 last week, and that was against an upbeat of about 2.5% that was recorded 2 weeks back. The market cap depreciated by about 13.88 billion naira to close at 7.21 trillion naira in the week. The total volume of stocks traded in the week closed at 2.24 billion units of shares valued at 19.35 billion naira. That's about 129.01 million US dollars, and that was exchanged in about 16,961 deals. Let's quickly take a look at some of the sectors listed on the exchange and how they fared last week. The financial services sector, of course, that sector is made up of the banks and insurance companies. They emerged as the most traded sector in the week in terms of volume. The volume traded in the sector this week alone, or last week alone, closed at 1.90 billion units, valued at about 16.05 billion naira. UBA PLC led the market volume for the week to displace FCMB PLC as the top traded stock on the transaction volume chart last week. Looking at the NSE Food Index, or let's take a broader look now at the sectoral indices. The NSE 30, which monitors the performance of blue chips on the market, the NSE 30 was down 1% last week to finish at 1,041.75. Food Index was upside by about 39 basis points. The banking stocks depreciated by about 3.81% last week to close at 332.02. The insurance stocks, where we've seen a whole lot of stocks listed in that sector. Of course, talking about the insurance stocks, most of the stocks are trading close to a nominal value. The index appreciated by 1.75% last week. Oil and gas index appreciated by 2.01%. Of course, the performance that we've seen in that we saw in the market last week was buoyed by a profit-taking. The few gains that investors have seen in the last 2 to 3 weeks, they came into the market last week and harvested all the gains. And most companies, or some companies, declared or came out with their earnings last week. BN Meyer came out with its earnings. NACO Avians came out with its first quarter results. First Aluminium Nigeria PLC, Capital Hotel, Omatech Ventures, Total Nigeria PLC, and for the company, it posted about 51 billion naira for its gross earnings for the period from January to March this year. Dangote Cement posted about 64.11 billion naira at gross earnings. Sterling Bank about 17.176 billion, while Dangote Sugar Refinery posted a total revenue of about 26.7 billion naira for the first quarter. Okay, let's take a look at the best performance for the week. We're seeing Dangote Flour was upside by 1.27 kobo last week. That was the aggregate gain for Dangote Flour, while Dangote Sugar gained about 52 kobo last week. Of course, these stocks will start the trading session at these current prices. Let's move over to the laggards for last week. That was the worst performers, where we saw the likes of Skybank down by 65 kobo. May and Baker closed at 149. Let's move over to other African exchanges. The Accra Bourse shed some weight last week. It's still shedding some weight, but it's been at the 1,000 point psychological level for a very long time now. It seems to depreciating, so to speak, 0.31% last Friday to start trade at this level today. The NSE 20, that's talking about Nairobi Securities Exchange, was down 0.25%. The South African market also with 1% on Friday to close at 3,697.96. Other African exchanges that we do watch closely on the show include Mauritius, talking about Semdex, 1,801.689 basis points. In Egypt, close to 0.5%, depreciation therefore the Egyptian exchange. The Gaborone index in Botswana, flattish. Okay, let's move over to Wall Street, where we saw Dow Jones Industrial Average as well as NASDAQ and what is the next index there? S&P 500 all losing last week. For the Dow, it logged its worst week in 2012. And we saw last Friday stocks faded in final hour of trade to close mixed on Friday, with major indices logging a second weekly decline, pressured by the news of JP Morgan Chase trading loss amid ongoing worries over the Eurozone. Of course, the Eurozone was still weighing in on these market. The blue chip index, which is the Dow Jones Industrial Average, posted its weekly drop this year, while the NASDAQ dipped about 0.76% within the trading hour, but closed at about 0.34% to 2,933.82. S&P 500 was also down by 0.3%. Okay, let's move over to Europe. Let's see if we will see some kind of silver lining. No, not at all. The main board, we're seeing a whole lot of reds so far. The Paris CAC run this morning, sharp lost at 2.45%. London FTSE 1.75% in the red. Frankfurt Victor DAX 2.21%. Other indices that we do watch in Europe this morning indicates that the Zurich SMI, that's in Switzerland, was also down 1.28%. Spain's IBEX 35 in the red also. Stocks 52.5% in the red territory. Let's move over to Asia, where we saw some kind of mixed trading also. The Nikkei 225, talking about the Tokyo Exchange, was upside 0.23% today. As we speak, these Asian Pacific markets are closed, but we do have the numbers for you. The Japanese Nikkei 225 closed on the green at 8,973.84. Hang Seng in Hong Kong 19,735.04, 1.15% in the red territory, while Chinese shares also closed on the red zone to 0.3%. Let's move over to Kospi of South Korea, 18 basis points in the red territory. Bombay sensitive index, that's talking about the Indian market, down nearly 1%. Sydney SX 200 is the only market that finished in the green today among the Asian Pacific markets, just 0.25% in the green territory at 4,289.16. Of course, the Eurozone woes are still weighing in on the Asian markets. Let's move over to commodities. Oil has been falling steadily. Brent crude lost about $11.58 today, and it's traded at about $110.58 a barrel, 1.5% in the red zone. We've seen Brent crude trading at about $122 So the commodities market is also suffering at this point. Light sweet at $93.94. Gold is also suffering a loss, I would say, $1,561.80 an ounce, 1.42% in the red. For gold, it's still trading far below its record high last year, September, of $1,920 an ounce. Let's check out other commodities, which happens to be agricultural commodities. Cocoa is also trading sharply down, 1.70% at $2,279. Coffee, $178. Sugar is doing just about $20. Let's take a look at Naira rates. The Naira against the US dollar hit a 6-week low. Of course, since the last 2 months, the Naira has been appreciating steadily. But today, the Naira is trading at the parallel market for 159 Naira. If you want to exchange a pound, of course, for the Naira, or the Naira for the pound, you should be doing that for about 258 Naira 50 kobo. That is the Naira against the British pound. The Naira against the Euro is trading at the parallel market for 210, while the Naira against the Real is doing 46 Naira. And for every 1,000 sefa you want to exchange, you will be getting that for 330 Naira. Let's take a look at international currencies now. The euro against the dollar is doing 128. International currencies are down. What's happening right now in Europe is weighing on the currencies market also, 0.25% there. Talking about the euro against the dollar. The dollar against the pound is doing 160, just marginally down. The dollar against the yen is trading 15 basis points higher, 80.16, while the Swiss franc is doing 0.93370. All right, those are the numbers in a very quick wrap. Let's quickly take a break. When we come back, my guest will be joining me. We'll be looking at data management in Nigeria after the break.
Mammoth Hotels Limited, specialized in designing, building, equipping and managing
and master. The final, which
welcome again. In case you're just joining us, this is The Money Show, your number one financial newsroom on the TV station of the year, African Independent Television. Joining me right now is Dr. Akin Fakmunda. He is, I'll call him an IT specialist. Is that okay to...
Absolutely.
Is it okay to say that?
Absolutely.
Okay, welcome to the program.
Good morning.
We're talking about data management this morning, and while we're talking about it, quite a whole lot has been happening, and I'm not ignorant of that fact. You know, we're grappling with our security challenges, and you will agree with me that we need, of course, we need to know the number of Nigerians that do live in the country, possibly also outside. And we also need to know the number of foreigners that do come into the country on a day-to-day basis. Apart from the security challenges that we are grappling with right now, we also do need to fine-tune or harmonize data processing or data capturing method or methodology or whatever you want to say in the country. And seemingly we're not really getting there. After so much money that has been thrown, you know, last year's election, INEC was given about 90 billion naira or more than that, because I know they gave the first time, they went the second time to capture about, I don't know if it's 70 million voters now. And with what I hear right now, the Federal Executive Council has approved another money, about 2.6 billion naira to capture 40 million voters, isn't it?
Yeah.
NIMC is on one part saying it's going to do a national identity number, which is NIN for
30 billion.
For 30 million. 30 billion naira. You know, so obviously just echoing in my head, I'm like, hold on, Nigeria, just wait a minute. What is actually happening? As an IT analyst, what sense are you making out of all this? What actually is the concept of data management?
Thank you very much. Good morning, viewers, for having me on this program. It's unfortunate that as a country we seem to be lacking in basic understanding of issues. We assume that, once we buy equipment and we just get a big project titled and with big money, we believe the problem will be solved. And it is not like that. Basically, what is data? Data is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parameters that you want to collect. All the projects we have talked about is about what? It's about our surname, about our date of birth, about our gender, about our date of birth, about our street address, about what we do. Maybe 10 basic parameters.
By your blood group or your gender.
Blood group, your fingerprint, then your picture, your photograph. What else? But every agency, they are trying to dig their own foundation to do the same thing over and over and over again. And it's so disheartening that all my colleagues who are IT specialists, who are in all these MDAs, they cannot connect the dots to see that we are just making a fool of ourselves in this country. Beginning from 1990, early 90s, we've been talking about National ID Card Project, Department of National Civil Registration. And then $19 billion was committed. We have not got anything to show for it. I think the issue is that we really have to come down to the basics to say what do we really want. And why are we having these duplications and multiplications and multiplicity of projects?
Do you think we haven't come down to the basics yet?
We have not.
Let me say in the last 10 years. You know why I say in the last 10 years or in the last 11 years, since the advent of GSM, you know what I'm talking about? Because it seemed when mobile handset came, it seemed to revolutionize everything, you know. So haven't we gotten it yet? We don't know what the basics are right now.
No, we don't, because even in the newspapers today, the headline is that the NCC is having problem with the SIM card registration database, meaning that all the field operations they've carried out, the data that have been collected are not seamlessly integrating. And why is this? It's because we are lacking in the understanding to even fill form correctly. Many people say our problem is very big. No, but we don't fill forms with our names correctly. Surname, first name. If somebody is bearing John Joseph, how do you know his surname? In other societies nowadays, surnames are taught to all children and all adults to be filled all capitals, capital letters. Then first name will be cap and loose. Which other way you write the surname first or first name second? Anybody doing data entry knows your surname from your first name. The second problem we have is that we don't write dates consistently the same way. And it's a challenge when you are now filled form and somebody is trying to enter into the computer. If you are born on 11th of May, whatever year, you write 11/5 whatever year. Okay, it's meaningless data because it could be that you were actually born in November on the 5th of November. If you just write 11/5/1950, let's say. So when you are now to try to calculate data into the computer now, you enter 11/5. Some people will actually mean May 11. Whereas somebody would think it's November 5th.
Now
November 5th.
Now this method, is it wrong? Or is it that we should have a standard
way of writing data? The days. In the United States, for instance, everybody is taught to write the month first. Everybody does it the same way.
And write it in full.
So if you're writing the month, you write May, M-A-Y, and then you write the day in numbers. Right? Then there's no room for confusion.
And the year in 4 digits.
In 4 digits to avoid the 2000 Y2K problem we had about 12 years ago. And then most things are not standardized. Acronyms are not standardized in Nigeria. The state names, the state, all titles are not standardized. There is no standard. And when you're trying to put into the computer, okay, if you say Bachelor of Science, is it B.SC? Is it B.S?
Is B dot capital S small c?
Small c. But people write it different ways. And when you put a small data operator trying to capture data from, let's say, 20 people, you're going to write data in different ways. And when you're now searching for people with BSC, you type in B dot capital S dot C, the computer will look for only those ones that match exactly the way you have typed it.
And the
others will appear as if it's not there. That's a big challenge. We need to teach ourselves these basics on how to fill forms and how to fill forms correctly. Otherwise, we are going nowhere. Secondly, we don't have street names. If I say I'm from somewhere, number what? Maybe they call Abuja street names, maybe call Lagos.
Hasn't it improved really? Because you go to some states, I've been to some states too, I will see addresses, the street addresses, the street names there.
But
hasn't it improved, like in Lagos, for example?
But Lagos is not Nigeria. We are talking about Kaduna, talking about Jos, talking about my town, Elisha in Osun State. Everything is just confusion. So how do you, and this one has a security challenge. If I tell you I'm somewhere, you cannot track me down because I live nowhere. Absolutely. We need to even recruit undergraduates that are not working during the holiday to go ahead and number all the streets nationwide for a very small amount of money. And then NIPOST has a beautiful program. We have zip code. The whole country has been divided into areas, and there is zip code like you have in the United States and you have it in UK too. With the zip code number, basically the computer narrows it down to a particular area of Nigeria automatically. That's just number. But we are ignoring what NIPOST has insisted for more than 10 years now. We don't use zip codes in this country.
Probably because the postal service system has been... Does anyone post letters anymore?
No. You see, when you talk about identity, location, it's not about letters alone. It's about knowing where you are and putting you down to a spot on Earth. Like we have GPS now. GPS can point you to the longitude and latitude point where you actually are. How can you track somebody down when you don't know where he is? You can't link him to a particular location which cannot change. Because the bottom line is that we're all moving around, but you must be tied down to a particular place in case you have security issues to answer for. But in the country today, your cell phone is mobile, you are in Lagos, you are saying you are in Abuja. And that's how data that is being kept. It's a big challenge. So in my own opinion, it is just that we need to go back to these basics. Computerization is not buying equipment and buying expensive toys. is a process of doing things that you are used to doing manually. You will now have to move from manual to automated systems, and there is no hard and fast rule about it.
Now, Doctor, you just mentioned some challenges that we do have in Nigeria in terms of capturing accurate data. The role of the government to set the standards for themselves and also for the private sector to follow, you know what I mean?
Absolutely, because who is to build road network? Only government can build road network. I can't build my own road. So it's just like you have a road network and road infrastructure. In the same way, establish a national data infrastructure so that you are identified by a particular number given by the government, and that number goes with you from cradle to the grave. And the government is the one that will keep the central record about every person. That is what government is about. Otherwise, we are back to the Stone Age, where everybody to himself. Absolutely, it is duty of government to bring orderliness. We are in a state of disorder now, in terms of all we are doing. In Abuja, you are installing CCTV cameras everywhere. So if you see me on CCTV now, how do you identify me? How? You can't pin me down to anywhere.
No, they'll get posters of you and place somewhere. Probably you're wanted or you're wanted for a crime.
But what you need to do in a few seconds, why must it take you months to do it? IT is to bring things in terms of speed and efficiency. But if you are still going back to the olden days of using town crier to announce in the marketplace, then are we part of the world information age?
Now, with all the stuff you've highlighted, with the creation of the Ministry of ICT, isn't it all? Wasn't President Goodluck Jonathan, I would say, his eyes were opened enough to see these challenges and create that ministry? What should be the role of that ministry?
I know my
colleagues to drive these processes.
I agree. I know my colleagues will say, "Oh, it's nice to create a new ministry." But if you create a ministry and you are not clear about the way you are going, just like any other ministries, we created so many women affairs ministry. How many women are, before you do a conference in Abuja, stakeholder workshop, have you captured the woman in my village to know what is happening to him? The ministry is not, okay, the ministry is now there, fine. It's supposed to be coordinating all these issues. But I'm sure they are probably overwhelmed because, as usual, in new ministry, do they have the budget? Do they have the staff? How many IT personnel are there in the ministry now to cope with the challenges? And then the other agencies who have been there before need that.